All right, so what did we say? We're saying that Moshe, he came from a different era. He came from a different level of reality than everyone else. His look at the world was a pure look at the world. To him, the whole rest of the world was like a circus. To him, it was obvious that there's God and that God is creating us. To him, it was obvious, Moses, that the whole world is an incredible miracle. Every detail of it is tremendously holy, potentially. And it's just waiting for us to use it, the whole entire world. And how people can do sins and go against the Torah, by him was just totally incomprehensible. How a Jew could do this. But nevertheless, he came down into the world and the Jews were suffering, etc. Okay, so Moses was very high. So you think that this would make Moses feel superior to everybody, which in fact he was superior. Moses was like the not to make any really just comparison, but like the stories about Superman or all these Marvel characters, that they have these marvelous powers and abilities, and they can see through walls, and that they can jump over buildings, and that they can and bullets don't hurt them. And Moses was like the example like that. The difference is that it was true. Moses, but not physically. Not that Moses physically was superior to everybody else. He was spiritually superior to everybody else. What does that mean today? That means absolutely nothing, right? There's so much in this world. It's hard to understand what is spiritual. What does it mean spiritual? What does it mean physical? Like today, well, what is spiritual? These religious people, the Pope, his ultimate defilement, right? The lowest level of reality possible are embodied by these other religious leaders. So what does it mean spiritual? Spiritual person. Spiritual nowadays is just a form of intense egotism, where a person lives his whole life just for himself. He goes and sits on a mountain. It's willing to suffer just so he can attain this level of pleasure and purity, and etc. So what does spiritual mean? What does it mean? So it says the spiritual, in this case we're talking about, it means that he felt God all the time. He came from this level, which is called tohu. The previous, he was drawn out from the water. He was drawn out from this high level of feeling God, which is even above the spiritual. Above the spiritual. It manifested itself in certain spiritual ways, but okay, so you would think that would make Moses very superior. He was, he would look at the whole world like it's some sort of a big circus. Well, you're in for a surprise. This made Moses very humble, envious. He saw that there was something in this world that he really lacked. Really lacked. Well, let's go. Let's see. In a Kavarnis, but we already explained that the soul of Moses was Mishmita Aleph. It was from the first Eon. And was drawn down to the world of Tikkun. And this level of Tikkun, then Moses, this was the level of Chachma. That he was the highest possible level of Tikkun. In fact, he came from a higher order, which is called Tohu, where everything is pure, from the level of Chachma. That's the level of seeing. Like it says, Vayar Reshit Lo. It says, Vayar Reshit Lo, Chelkat Safun, Mechokek Safun. It's one of the blessings in Zota Bracha that Moses gives in the end. Lochen, therefore, Kishara Moshe, when Moshe saw, Bebechinet Ria, Mamash, he saw, Bakal Olam, that this whole world of Tikkun, namely of Atzilut, the highest level of a Tikkun, of Atzilut, Sheyored Benim Shachbo, that it was drawn, that he was put into, when he saw this world that he was put into, so you would think this whole world is terrible. What are you doing, God? Why did you put me in such a low, terrible place? People are doing sins. People are going against you. Moses says, I'm not used to this. But when he saw Maud knows Techilim Basofo, and it says that was one of the reasons why he says he was covered peh. He was hard, he couldn't speak because he was such from a high level that he couldn't bring it down into speech. But he came down to this world and he saw that this world has something that the world of Tohu does not have. What does it have? This principle of nuts techilas and that the beginning, the highest level can be expressed only in the lowest level. By Moses, there was no low levels. By Moses, everything was high. So he realized that in this world of Tohu, as high as everything was, it was not nowhere near as high as what can be expressed in the lowest levels. Because the highest level is only found in the end, and the end was the original intention in the beginning. This was a new thing by Moses. This is not found in this physical world at all. That's one of the reasons that the Lubavitcher Rebbe instituted this idea of going out and putting tefillin on non-religious Jews. Chabad, they go into the street and they ask people, excuse me, sir, are you Jewish? Come put on tefillin. In Israel, you don't have to ask people if they're Jewish so much. Once in a while, you have to ask a person, if he's not Jewish. But you say, come put on tefillin. What's putting on tefillin? Tefillin is these two boxes. You put on one on your arm, one on your head, and it's this physical thing that you do. And at first glance, it has absolutely nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with anything, especially if you're asking a non-religious person. You can understand if you're asking a person that he had some idea of what it was, and it'll wake up some nostalgia and remember how his father used to put on tefillin. But we're talking about people that their fathers didn't put on tefillin and their mothers didn't do it on, and their their fathers and their grandfathers and mothers don't put on tefillin, and the grandparents that. What does tefillin do? What could it possibly do? It's a better take a person and sit down with him and explain an idea. Have him ask a question, give him a book. He can read the book. When you're just putting a tefillin on a person, what does that possibly do? What could it possibly do? It doesn't appeal not to his senses, to his intelligence, to his emotions, to his memory, what does it appeal to? It says it appeals to his essence. And the essence can only be expressed in the physical, in the lowest. Only the lowest levels, that's what arouses the essence. When you put tefillin on a Jew, it arouses something inside of that he doesn't even know what it is. The Jew doesn't know what it is. And it could be that it doesn't even have any effect on it. It's so high. But it could be that it does. And eventually it will. And that's something which is present in this physical world. There's not in any of the other levels, the spiritual, with the angels, with this, that the end, the lowest level, reaches a level which is higher than any spiritual level can reach. And Moses was very amazed. And therefore he came down lower. Neged haneshamos to olam atikun. Therefore he was humbled in front of the people who were born in this normal world. When God came to him and said, take the Jewish people out, he said, listen, God, I don't, true, I'm a very holy person, I'm a very high person, but I see that these people that they're in this world, they have something that I don't have. They have, because they're in the physical world and they're so low, so that jumps them up, that springs them up and wakens in them this power of the essence of God, which I don't have. I just have this level. Because the people, the Jewish people, normal people, in this world that don't come from this world of Tohu, they have a higher quality than Moses did. Mitzara Kelim, because of what's called these vessels of Tikkun, namely this world of Tikkun, this physical world. Shenat Sofan B'tchilato, because the end is found in the beginning, and there was somehow or other the lowest levels. This is exactly what God intended. he didn't really intend that we should take it so low that we should do sins. But God wanted that there should be the potential to do sin. He wanted it to be. Moses didn't have such a thing. It's low, which is not the case by Moses. Showed that Moses came from Tohu. That's what it means that Moses was hard, had a speech impediment. A Chabad Lashon says that his mouth and his tongue were heavy. Doesn't mean they were heavy. He couldn't speak properly. Why? Because the source of Moses came from such a high level. That there were tremendously high lights and revelations of God. And because they were so high, he had no way of bringing it down into this physical world. That's what it means that Moses was hard of speaking. That he could not bring, or sechlo, his intelligence, his awareness, letoch kliyapeh, into his mouth. Into this thing of a physical mouth, he couldn't. Moses was made for sitting and thinking and contemplating and being aware of the oneness of God, like somebody in heaven, right? Like a soul when it goes into heaven, but even higher than that. If so, this by Moses was a serious defect. He looked at this, that he was lacking something very, very essential. He was lacking what? Mailat atikun. Shakelim merubim, that have tremendous vessels, lahachela orot niflot, they have these tremendously high lights. This is amazing. It was dear in his eyes. Okay, and therefore he said, Shalach nal bishlach, when God came to Moses by the burning bush. We're going to learn that today. In the burning bush. And he said, Moses, go take the Jewish people out of Egypt. So Moses said, maybe send somebody else, God. Maybe send somebody else. I'm too spiritual. I don't have this quality of the essence of God that can only be achieved in this physical world. He did not come from this world of tikkun. Because tikkun, this physical world, has this amazing quality, something which was new in it, not so from the tichilasa, that the end is found in the beginning. Namely, davka mitzad, only because of keli, the tikkun, the vessels of tikkun, like we said before. The ein zot etzlo, this is not by him. Sharihu kavod peh, Moses could not speak. He was too spiritual. So what are we saying? We're saying that because Moses was such a tremendously high spiritual level, and he had such a tremendously high revelation of God, and he lacked darkness, he lacked ignorance of God, which is so prevalent in the lower world, which is called this order of tikkun. In the world of tikkun, there's a spiritual world, and there's a lower spiritual world, and there's a lower spiritual world. And even the highest of the spiritual worlds is nowhere near as high as what Moses was. But in the lowest of the worlds, in this physical world, it's possible to achieve a level which is much, much higher than any levels, not even a level, the essence of God. And that Moses could not achieve because he didn't have any challenges. He didn't have any physicality. I read books by Viktor Frankl. Very, very amazing insights into human personality and human what is human. And he tells a joke. He tells a lot of jokes, actually. And one of the jokes is that that in World War I, in the trenches, there was a doctor, a Jewish doctor, in the German army. And there was a colonel, a German colonel. And they started the bombardment. They started, people that were in the trenches, so they had the machine guns. The enemy had machine guns and mortars. They were shooting mortars, and the bombs were coming closer, and the machine gun bullets were whizzing over their heads. And the colonel, was calmly smoking a cigarette. And he turned to the doctor and he said, I bet you're really afraid, right, Jew? I bet you're really afraid. I'm not afraid at all. And the Jewish doctor said back to him, he said, you're right that I'm afraid. But I'll tell you one thing. If you were as afraid as I am now, you would run away. I'm not running away. In other words, yes, I am from a lower level than you as far as, war goes. You're on a much higher level as far as, battle. But as far as personal achievement, if you were as low as I was, then you would run away. I at least am defying my fear. You wouldn't be able to defy your fear. If you were sure that death was coming to you, you would run away. And I'm not running away. So in other words, the lowest level somehow or other can demonstrate a higher level. I'm sorry to bring such an example, but it's one that just popped into my mind. Moses looked down into the world and he saw the people had these tremendous challenges, and nevertheless, they were doing Torah, they were doing commandments. It says that Moses also looked into the future generations, and he saw how low everybody is, namely our generation. And he saw the people of our generation, how far away they are from any sort of true awareness of God. And nevertheless, they were serving God, as he says he was weak. He says he was embarrassed. He said, if I was at that level, I wouldn't be serving God at all. Where do these people get this power from? He says that's the essence. That's what Moses said. That he became very humble. He humbled himself. That he was the humblest person in the world, more than anybody else. Says the Rebbe, these are footnotes from the third Rebbe of Chabad. Really, this was a tremendously high level that Moses was hard speaking, that he couldn't speak, that he had a speech impediment. Because why? The reason was that he had so much awareness of God, so much lights of godliness, that therefore he couldn't bring it into the physical world, which is not the case the world of Tikkun. The world of Tikkun, there's not so much awareness of God at all. And there's a lot of vessels. And it's true. Elisha in calls in, nevertheless, there's a better advantage from Tikkun. So in other words, Moses was superior to everybody else in every way. Moses was like the awareness that people will get when eventually, when the one stage of the Moshiach coming, that everyone will be aware of God. And now every human being in the world will be aware of the Creator to different degrees, and that's what everyone will be interested in, is serving the Creator. And everyone would just be so grateful that God is creating us. And the world will be a harmonious world and a happy world and a productive world, and etc. Everybody, but that's the way it'll be. So Moses, in a way, was ideal. He was the ideal human being. But nevertheless, Moses was, if you want to call it, jealous, because he didn't have these challenges of the physical world, the lowness of the physical world, and that's specifically revealing the greatness. So God answered back to Moses. If you remember, that's the name of this mimer that we're learning. Let's go back. 1 second, let's go back. Here, see, it says, that's the name. Vayomer Hashem Elav. God said back to Moses, Adam, who gave a mouth to a person. So this was after Moses said, right, this is by the burning bush, right? God said, good news, Moses, go take the Jews out of Egypt. And Moses said, send somebody else. Shlach na bi'at tishlach. Send somebody else. I can't speak. I'll go to Paro. I can't talk. I'm the last person to have to send. God said back to Moses, who is it that created the mouth? Who put mouths in people? Where'd you get this thing of a mouth from, right? Well, I did it. I'm creating your mouth all the time. That's what God said to Moses. Okay, so that's, now we're going to understand the answer. Zeu, that's what it means. 1 second. Zeu, Hashem, Eshilo, God answered him back. Misam pel Adam. Who is it that put a mouth in a human being? Who? Halo Anochi Hashem. Isn't it me? Isn't it me? But he doesn't say me. Isn't it not I? Says God. Is it not I? I mean, I guess that might even be proper English, right? Isn't it? Proper English. Is it not I? I did. Okay, anyway. Perush, emet, true. Ata, Omer, you say, Sha'ata kaved peh. You said, Moses, that you could not speak. She'ein lecha kelim, you haven't got the vessels to speak. Ke'elu animsa'im, which are found in the world of Tikkun. Because in the world of Tikkun, there is a lot of vessels. And these vessels, true that they impair and they cover over godliness. There's not too much godliness either. But in these vessels that impair godliness, that specifically there is found the highest level of God. When you defy the darkness of this world and you serve God despite all obstacles, and this is a level that Moses can't reach. So Moses said, I don't have this level. I don't have the level to go against these obstacles. I'm a spiritual person. I can't come down into the world. I can't take the Jews out of Egypt. If you want to do it, you do it yourself, God. What do you have to send me for? And because Moses, your soul is so high, but your vessels, your body is so incapable of expressing this in this physical world, that your mind, your awareness can't be brought down into speech. But so Moses, you got a good point. You have a good point. You are a very high, holy person. Your awareness of me is so holy. You can't bring it into speech. Can't bring it into speech. Let's just take a simple example. You take a person, I don't know, okay, just for the sake of the argument, right? Albert Einstein, and they say, okay, explain what is nuclear physics. Says, okay, I'll try to physics. 1 minute. You have to explain it to a second grade class. Kids in the second grade. Now, how can I explain nuclear physics to kids like that? You have to explain. You have 10 minutes to explain it. I have to have at least, I mean, I can give me some time. Again, such high ideas, you can't bring down to such a low level. You can't do it. That's the same thing Moses. Moses had such a tremendous awareness of God that he couldn't express it in a physical way to the people. But so God said, so therefore Moses said, listen, God, I can't take the Jews out of Egypt. It's too low of a thing for me. Find somebody else who's, capable, a fighter, a politician, or somebody else, not me. Who is it that makes a mouth to a person? The Adam, the comets, Ha-Adam. Who made a mouth to Lo Adam, to the man? Not just a man in general, the man. Who is the man? Ha-Adam Yadua. This man, this one man that everybody knows. Who is this one man? Hainu bechinas Adam d'Atzilus. The level of Adam of Atzilut. What is that? What is the Adam of Atzilut? Says, well, you don't know what it is? No. Isaiah did. Ezekiel did. They saw a man sitting on a throne. They had a vision, a prophetic vision, where they saw a man sitting on the throne. What did they saw? They saw the dimension of the world of Atzilut. They saw this tremendously high, the highest level in the world of Tikkun. They saw a man sitting on a throne. What is the man? God. God is a man. What are they talking about? That's the opposite of Judaism. God is not a man. Oh yeah. Oh, and he sits on a throne also. He's in the world. God is a chair. What are you talking about? God is a chair. He comes and says the fact that doesn't it say in the Bible that we're created in God's image? Yes. So God does have an image, right? No, he doesn't have an image, but it says that he does. It says that God created us in his image. So what does it mean? I don't know. I don't know what it means. So he says, okay, I'll tell you what it means. There's all these books of Kabbalah that explains how God articulated and concealed and veiled and hid himself in order to create the world. And this is a whole miraculous process, which is called Tzimtzum. That's how God created the world. In the Bible, it's referred to in very, very simple, if you want to call it user-friendly terms, God spoke. He spoke and he created the world. And we see a lot of times God speaks. The whole Torah is God's speech. All the prophets receive God's speech. So we see that God has some human characters. He speaks. There's things that he wants. There's things that he doesn't want. That's the Torah. Sometimes it says in the Torah that God gets happy over the sacrifices. So it says the beginning place where God made this form, and really there's higher levels, but let's say for our purpose, is what's called this world of Atzilut. Atzilut, there was already this form of God, which is called God's 10 spheres. And the man sitting on the throne, like this is an aspect of God called Chachma. And it's the throne is this aspect of God, which is called Bina, or the world of Bria. Same thing, pretty much. So that's what God said. Who gave a mouth to the man, the form of man, which is the highest form of man in the highest worlds, who, the Adam of Atzilut. This is what's called the name of God, which is called Ma. Ma, remember we learned this before? Ma, this is the God's name, Yud, and then Hey, Vav, Hey. If you take the letters of God's name, Yud, Hey, and Vav, and Hey, that comes up to 26. And if you fill them up phonetically, instead of Yud, you say Yud, Vav, Dalet, so that it becomes 20, and etc. You fill up these different letters with a Hey. In any case, it comes out to the gematria of 45. 45. This is the gematria, and 45 is the gematria of Adam. Right? God is 26. The God's name is 26. Yud, and then Hey, Vav, Hey, that's 26. And you have to add on another 19. So what do you add on? You add on a Yud, and then you add on 2 Heys, and a Vav, and it's sent to the Vav, and it comes out to be 45. That happens to be the numerical value of man. Okay, let's get back. God is saying to Moses, don't forget, Moses, you are made according to a pattern, to a plan. And this plan is already found in the world of Atzilut. The whole world is according to man. Every man is a small world, and the world is like a big man. The world is like one unit. So this aspect of Adam, of Atzilut, of the configuration of these Sfirot in the world of Atzilut, this is the plan from which you came, Moses. And if you look at this plan, how it is in the spiritual worlds of Atzilut, you'll see that people have mouths. Shehu klalat tikun. This world of Atzilut, this is the first level of this level of tikkun that Moses came into. Kanoda, as is known. Atzilut is the highest of the 4 worlds or 4 dimensions which constitute this whole order, which is called tikkun, not like tohu, like we talked about before. The Indian kliyapeh, the whole idea of that man in his original form, or if you want to call it God, has a mouth. Who a mamshech or a makif. This draws down what's called a surrounding light, like it says in Pri Etz Chaim, that by the means of a brach, when you make a blessing on a commandment, nimshach draws down level of or makif. This is also when you look in the Tanya, what in the 4th chapter, isn't it? The Tanya, right at the end. The aliyah, the mitzvah, by means of the commandment, there's what's called an or panimi, an inner light. 4th chapter, 5th chapter. I'm sorry, I have to go over this more. No. 5th chapter. Sorry. 5th chapter of the Tanya. Okay, so God sets up the world in a way that we have mouths. Now, I mean, this shouldn't be such an amazing thing because God also has a mouth. That's pretty amazing. God has a mouth that he creates the world with his mouth. That's how the Torah starts, that God speaks. And God also has a mouth that he speaks to the prophets. And here God is speaking to Moses. So God is saying, listen, Moses, I have a mouth, right? Yes, I created you, right? Yes, well, you're created according to a pattern. And this pattern is what's called the man of Atzilut. And this man of Atzilut has a mouth. Well, just like I fixed that, I can fix you. Because the mouth has a tremendous power. The mouth has a tremendous power to draw down this surrounding light of God. Lochen, in the tefillin shel rosh, where you put on tefillin, in the head tefillin, there's a different opinions if you make a blessing on the head tefillin or not. In the Chabad, we don't make a blessing on the head tefillin. We make one blessing on the hand tefillin, and if you don't speak, you don't make any more blessings. The Sephardic, that's the way the Sephardic Jews also. The Sephardic Jews, they don't make a blessing on the tefillin on the head. You put the box on your arm. Before you put it on, you make a blessing, and you put that on. You don't speak, and you put your tefillin on your head, right, without speaking. The Ashkenazic Jews, the Jews more from Europe, they do make a blessing. Im Yevorachu, if you make a blessing, a special blessing before or not. Because Shamak, if this high level of the head tefillin is so high, therefore the custom of the Sephardic Jews and Chabad also is not to make a blessing. The Svirlim that they say, you can't draw down this level. But the Ashkenazic Jews, they say you can draw down this level. Okay, that's a side thing. The point is that Al Kol Panim, Lamdu, we can learn, Shekli Peh, making a blessing, Hu Mamshich or Makif. Can you draw down this level or not? In any case, how do you draw down this high level? By making a blessing, your speech. That's what God said to Moses, Misam Pel Adam, who made a mouth to people. Kalomar, Mi Etzil, Kli Peh. Who is it that made the mouth, gave the mouth the ability to draw down this surrounding light of God, right? When you speak the words of Torah, when you say a blessing, you say it, the mouth has the ability to draw down a level of godliness, which is in some ways even higher than deed. Who gave this ability of the mouth to draw down such tremendously high levels? Halal and Ochi, is it not me, said God? The essence, Orein Sof, the essence, the source of the Kav and the Chut, the source of all of this creation of the whole world. Kav and Chut is what's called the beam of creation that comes from God. In simple terms, it's God's mouth, God's speech. The Orein Sof Baruch Hu, Hamakar L'Kol, this is the source of all, or Panimio Makifim, that God said, I am the one that creates this level of Tohu. I'm the one that creates the level of Tikkun. I'm the one that makes this world in such a low and a dark place with such thick vessels. And nevertheless, the mouth, a human being's mouth, especially a Jew's mouth, has the ability to draw down and to reveal in the world, is a mouth saying a blessing to reveal this highest of highest spiritual levels. Who gave the mouth this ability, says God? I did. So what? Im Kain, if so, if I gave the mouth this ability, nothing can be withheld from me. What are you trying to tell me, Moses? That the fact that you can't speak because you're so high, that's the way it's going to remain. Said the fact of the matter, said God, I created nature. Nature is not any obstacle for me. I want it to seem that way. That's the world of Tikkun. I'll be with your mouth. The same God that gave the mouth the ability to make blessings and draw down this essence of God when you make a blessing, that same God, which is me, will be with you. That's what God is saying to Moses. Pirish, even though Moses, you come from this level of Tohu, and the level of Tohu has not got the ability to draw down from God's essence. Only the vessels in this world can. Because the end, the beginning is only aroused by the end. The highest is only aroused by the lowest. And you don't know what lowest means. You haven't got the vessels of Anochi, but me, I, God. Shasiti at the Kelim. I made this whole thing of these vessels of Tikkun and the world of Tohu. I can transform the whole entire thing litarev bechinas tov v'tikun. I'll mix tov v'tikun together. I'll give you the qualities of tikkun as well. Hayinu amalo teshneim. You're going to have the abilities of both. You're going to have tremendous lights of godliness and awareness of God of tohu, which is even above the spiritual. And you're also going to have the quality of tikkun, which that means these vessels, a lot of vessels, etc. That's what it means. The beginning is found in the end, and the end is in the beginning. Anochi, I will be with your mouth. Shagam sheshar, even though you come from tohu, nevertheless, God will have you the vessels of tikkun. By means of this, you can draw down lights of godliness which are above even tohu, and that will be, you'll have both levels, namely because kamot, like it says, notes techilas and besofo. The highest is found in the lowest is found in the highest. Also the same thing with you. There can be found this high quality of tikkun off in tohu. Therefore, God is saying to Moses, I'm going to make you the example of all the Jewish people are going to be. Eventually, the Jewish people are going to receive the Torah. The Torah comes from my essence. From my essence, every single Jew is going to be able to, when he makes a blessing, when he does a commandment, to draw down the essence of God. But you're going to be the beginner, Moses. What does this come to teach us? That nothing should be impossible as far as holiness goes. As far as godliness goes, nothing we should ever say is impossible. And even more, the more it seems impossible, that's the more help that God will give. That's the point. That's what the point that God is trying to make over here. To Moses. Moses was totally incapable of taking the Jews out of Egypt. He couldn't even speak. And the Rebbe says, why? Because he was too high. He couldn't come down to low. And not only that, Moses realized that being in this physical world low and overcoming the obstacles in this world, the art of doing Torah and commandments and using this world to serve God, reaches a higher level than he could be at. And he said, I'm not at that level. I can't do it. I'm not at that level. God, pick somebody else. And God said, don't worry about it. You're going to stay at your level. And I'm also going to give you the ability to come down into this world. That's something like what is going to be in the days of the Moshiach. Moshiach says everybody's going to retain all of their personality, all of their ego, all of their character traits, all of their individuality and their uniqueness. And in addition to this, everyone will be totally surrendered to the creator of the universe at all times, which usually would wipe out a person's personality totally. But Mashiach is going to enable the world to have both of these two opposites, pure godliness and pure egotism at the same time. The ego will transform to be good. How is it going to be? It has to be soon, but it's going to be. And Moses was the example. Moses' problem was the opposite of ours. Our problem is that we're so low, we can't imagine how he can be so high. And Moses' thing was he was so high, he couldn't imagine how you could be so low. But when he saw us, how you could use our lowness to reach a level that was higher than him, that's why he said he was incapable, that he couldn't do it. Because we have powers, so to speak, that Moses doesn't have. And that's why Moses was so interested in the Jewish people and why he stuck with them, despite all their sins and everything, because he realized that the sins that they have, this is just reacting to the world improperly. But if you react to the world properly, it draws down this tremendous high level, and that's the Torah, how to react to the world properly. Okay, tomorrow, God willing, we'll start the mimer from the beginning of Parshat of Shemot. Shemot, about going out of Egypt. What's the whole idea of being in Egypt back then and being in Egypt now, and how to get out? Now let's learn the Devar Malchut of this week. We'll continue.